So if scene one was the world of the supernatural and scene two was the world of men, scene three is where they collide in very fantastic ways. So scene three opens with the witches, and really and truly, we're not going to spend a lot of time with this, with these first couple lines of the witches. I mean, first couple lines, like the first 30 lines of the scene, because all it's really doing is just establishing that these are witches and they're really out to get people. So they're talking about how, a woman wouldn't give her chestnuts, and so she's going to torment the woman's husband who's out, a sailor out on the waves. And so all we really want to know from this or take away from it is that the witches like to kind of play with humans. They like to use them as their playthings and kind of as their puppets. And so maybe we've got that idea for Macbeth coming up, that maybe they're going to do the same thing. So, the first witch, our drooly witch, you remember her, is going to say, a drum, Macbeth doth come. And of course then Macbeth enters onto the scene. And his first line of the entire play, he says, so foul and fair a day I have not seen. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Look, he paraphrases it. He paraphrases the whole antithesis right here. So foul and fair a day I have not seen. It's like when they say the title of the movie in the movie. I love it. I absolutely love it. So immediately, again, there's this connection. How are the witches connected with Macbeth? How are we going to see them? How is this going to happen? So the witches all of a sudden appear, okay? And they're just bam, there on stage. And Banquo is the first person to really draw attention to them. So it's Banquo who tells us, is really the only person in the entire play who gives us a physical description of these witches. And he says, you should be women, but yet your beards say that you aren't. And each stubby finger on her, each choppy finger on her thin lips. So they're withered, they're wild. These are very disgusting looking women or witches. And that's what we're supposed to take away. But Macbeth's first line to the witches is really, really interesting. He says, speak if you can. What are you? Now, none of those are actually periods. Speak, if you can, comma, what are you? So it's this very long declarative sentence that I would say in a much louder voice if it weren't like almost 10 o'clock right now and my kids are asleep upstairs. But it's very authoritative in tone. It's very demanding. It's definitely, like showcasing his dominance right here. This is a man who's used to having his orders followed. But it's very, very odd that he uses this tone with witches. Okay, again, life lesson, don't make them mad, okay? And so don't, speak that forcefully to them. So here we have, the witches give 3 greetings to Macbeth. They call him by 3 different names. And these are typically known as the witches' 3 predictions for Macbeth. Okay, so first they say, all hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis. Now, Glamis is actually Macbeth's title. Okay, so just like the Thane of Cawdor, okay, so here we have Thane of Glamis, that's his title. Then the second witch says, all hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor. And our ears perk up because we know that he's going to be made the Thane of Cawdor. But Macbeth doesn't know this, and now all of a sudden we're beginning to wonder, how do the witches know this? Okay, and then third, lastly, they say, all hail Macbeth, that shalt be king hereafter. Now that's a big one. Okay, because the only way that Macbeth is supposedly going to become king is if, not only Duncan dies, but Duncan's got 2 sons. How in the world would Macbeth be able to become king? Now, Macbeth doesn't speak after the witches give him these predictions. Instead, it's Banquo that has these very first lines. And his lines aren't to the witches. He's talking to Macbeth. He says, good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? And so it's through Banquo that we really get Macbeth's reaction. He says that he starts, and it's kind of like, startled, okay? So he's startled, and he seems to fear. So we know at first that Macbeth is very uneasy with these greetings, with these predictions. And then Banquo turns to the witches. And Banquo essentially says to the witches, and yes, I did just fix my hair there. Banquo essentially says to these witches, you know, you've given these wonderful greetings, these wonderful prophecies to my partner. If you go down to line 56, of noble heaven and of royal hope, that he seems rapt withal. Okay, and I think that word rapt is really important there. It's almost like he's in rapture, like he's in awe. Now, being in awe of something, being enraptured by something is very different than being startled by something, being very fearful. So notice the progression of Macbeth's, feelings towards these predictions really, really, really quickly. Okay, really, really, really quickly. So he goes from being startled and fearful to being enraptured and in awe of them. And so Banquo says to them, if you can see into the seeds of time, tell me, give me some predictions as well. And so the witches do. And so here are Banquo's 3 predictions from the witches. We're on page 63 now. So at line 65, he gets his first prediction: lesser than Macbeth and greater. And then, not so happy, yet much happier. Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. Now, all 3 of these are examples of what? Antithesis. Okay, so we've again got these examples of the witches speaking in antithesis. But now we know that a lot of times when the witches speak in antithesis, it means that they're trying to convey something important that we haven't figured out just yet. Now, if I were in class, this is where I would stop and I would say, I want you to paraphrase those 3 predictions. What do they actually mean? But it would be awkward if I said, go ahead and do that and I'll just wait here. So instead, lesser than Macbeth and greater. Well, maybe he won't be as socially high as Macbeth, but he'll be a better man. Not so happy, yet much happier. Now they're playing on the word happy there because happy also means fortunate. So maybe he won't be as wealthy as Macbeth, but maybe he'll be literally much happier. And then that last one, I think you have a footnote about thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. Okay, so your sons will be king, but you won't. And again, we in the audience are sitting here kind of scratching our heads going, how does this work? How will you be greater than and less than? How will you be not as happy, but much happier? So for the audience, we're still trying to figure this out. Okay, how is this going to happen? Finally, after these predictions for Banquo, Macbeth finds his voice. It's been 30 lines. It's been 30 lines since he last spoke. And finally he does. And his first line is so wonderful. It's so telling because he says, stay, you imperfect speakers. Tell me more. And I think those 3 words are so important. Tell me more. He wants to hear more now. He's kind of intrigued. He likes these ideas. Tell me more. By my father's death, I know I am the Thane of Glamis. He says, I know that's my title. But how of Cawdor? The Thane of Cawdor lives, a prosperous gentleman. And to be king stands not within the prospect of belief. No more than to be Cawdor. Now notice the argument that he kind of sets himself up for there. Okay. Remember, he doesn't know that the Thane of Cawdor is going to be executed. And then we've got, he says, and to be king stands not within the prospect of belief. No more so than to be Cawdor. So what he's saying is there's no more way that I could become king than I could become the Thane of Cawdor. But what that means is that if it is possible that he is the Thane of Cawdor, well, then it's also possible maybe he could become king. So see how he uses that logic there to kind of trap himself a little bit. He's kind of saying, oh, well, but if this happens, maybe it is possible for me to become king. Okay. And of course, then the witches vanish because you can't really order a witch around. They just come and go as they please. And so they vanish. So Macbeth says, Banquo's like, oh, we must have we eaten from the insane root? Are we dreaming this? And Macbeth says, I would they had stayed. He wishes that they would have stayed, that he would have been able to hear more from them. And then immediately onto the scene, here comes Ross and Angus. And we know what news they've got. They're going to greet Macbeth and say, by the way, you are now the Thane of Cawdor. Congratulations. And Banquo's immediate reaction is, what? Can the devil speak true? And that's a very important line for Banquo, because it tells us how Banquo is feeling about this. Banquo doesn't trust the witches. Didn't from the very beginning. Okay, he doesn't trust these witches. He equates the witches with the devil. So it immediately kind of places Banquo very firmly on the side of Christianity. And so we're left wondering here, what's going to happen next? So go and watch scene 3. There's a little bit left there. Macbeth has some weird asides where he begins to fantasize about killing Duncan. We're going to cover all of that on Wednesday. But you've got a really good hold right here on scene 3. Once you finish watching scene 3, then you're going to go back to Schoology. You're actually going to do the post-assessment for today on Schoology. Remember, that's for a few points. So take your time with that and really read those questions carefully. And hopefully, again, I will see you on Wednesday. If you have any trouble at all during class, feel free to shoot me a quick email.